Welcome to Real Turkey channel. This is Atilla Yeşilara. I'm greeting you from sunny Istanbul. We didn't have winter, we didn't have snow, rain or sleet. So what's going to happen in the summer vis-a-vis water, I really don't know. But that's not today's subject. I'm going to give you my final predictions for local elections, which are going to be held this Sunday on 31st of March. Let me just summarize it very briefly. Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir stay with CHP. In Anatolia, the main opposition party, CHP, loses some of the fortresses it won in 2019, but overall it retains most of the major metropolitan areas, which means that on 1st of April, most of Turkey, by population, will be governed by an opposition party mayor. Now, this is the very brief summary, but I want to tell you how I make these predictions, because if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you would realize or you would remember that I misguided my audience last May when I predicted that the then opposition candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu will become president and the opposition alliance called Nation Alliance would gain a majority in Turkey's parliament. I was wrong. But honestly, I didn't reflect my personal views to these videos. I believe in empirical evidence, which in political science is essentially polls. I took the average of polls and they told me that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu was going to win by a large margin and by a much smaller margin and probably by a much wider error band, the opposition would capture the Grand Assembly. Obviously, polls were wrong. Why were they wrong? I believe because of shy voter syndrome. The opposition alliance got along fairly well, not perfectly well, but at a degree that has been unprecedented in Turkish politics, but their voters didn't see eye to eye. Many voters couldn't cross the party lines and vote for candidates that were nominated on the rosters of a party which they treated as ideological rival or evil all their lives. Again, this time I'm using polls, but I'm putting much more emphasis on expert opinion, people who travel on the field, as well as the polls by those pollsters who declare themselves openly pro-AKP. Again, starting with Ankara, Mansur Yavaş is going to win. There is really no doubt as far as expert opinion goes. There are no polls which show the AKP candidate Tevfik Altınok winning. The same goes for Izmir. Izmir traditionally votes for CHP, and this time, despite CHP leader Ozgur Özel bundling the nomination process and sacking the incumbent mayor Tunç Soyer, the new candidate is faring well against Hamza Dağ, a heavyweight in AKP ranks, which couldn't really gain traction. Istanbul is more complicated. In Istanbul, there are some polls which show AKP candidate Kurum ahead. But again, here, I put a lot of emphasis on pro-AKP agencies or agencies which are featured on pro-AKP TV channels, such as Sonar, such as Genar, such as Optimar and Betamar. For instance, Sonar said, and which created a firestorm in AKP and MHP ranks, that with 1 week to go to the polls, incumbent Ekrem İmamoğlu was ahead. The others didn't exactly come out and say that, but they couldn't claim that Murat Kurum was winning. And having watched Turkish politics for all my life, I'm 65, I've been involved in politics since I was 15, it is very unusual for the representatives or spokesperson of a party not to claim they are winning. Thus, I must conclude that Ekrem İmamoğlu are much closer to victory. I must remind you, though, for some reason, Erdogan made the sole object of victory Istanbul. So he's the kind of person who is very Machiavellian. He would not shy away from resorting to foul play. Remember, in the last Istanbul election in 2019, Ekrem İmamoğlu won by something like 23,000 votes, like a 0.1% of total voters. And under the instructions or guidance of President Erdogan, Turkey's election monitoring body canceled the elections and ordered a second round, which Ekrem İmamoğlu won resoundingly. I don't know what Erdogan is planning to do this time in case Ekrem İmamoğlu leads during the tallying, but I'm afraid that it could get extremely nasty. In fact, I'm fairly sure in the next prediction that by Monday we will know what happens in all the cities except in Istanbul. Before I go to whether my forecast could change, whether Erdogan could stage maneuvers to turn the tide, let me talk about some other Anatolian cities. Major population centers are Bursa, Antalya, Adana, Hatay, Balıkesir. I'm not counting all of those. For instance, I really don't pay much attention to Black Sea coast, such as Trabzon, Samsun, which always vote AKP. I also don't pay much attention to the cities in the interior, the sole livelihood of which comes from state support, agriculture, or social security payments. They traditionally vote for AKP or MHP, and I don't expect that to change. I'm talking about cities like Kayseri, Sivas. But for instance, CHP may lose Antalya. It is certain to keep its posts in Hatay and Mersin. Eskişehir, which has been in CHP hands for 25 years, is a dead heat. There, the very popular mayor, Büyük Erşen, retired. I don't know how his successor is performing, but I've seen polls that show either candidate ahead. The same goes for Edirne and Çanakkale, also traditionally secular cities, which, if not always, mostly vote for CHP. I think those races are extremely close. On the AKP side, Bursa and Balıkesir, again, stalwart conservative fortresses. Races are very competitive. They could go to CHP. Though I must admit, I'm more certain in predicting that Antalya will fall to AKP than CHP will win Bursa. There are surprises. A new ultra-Islamist party governed by Mr. Fatih Erbakan, the new welfare party, Yeni Refah Partisi, could potentially win the mixed population hub, southern hub of Şanlıurfa, and perhaps the small interior Anatolian, eastern Anatolian city of Yozgat. I think the pro-Kurdish rights party, now called DEM, used to be called HADEP, I believe, would retain its mayoral posts in 10 or 11 cities where ethnic Kurds constitute the majority of voters. Could these results change? There are a lot of things that in the next 3 or 4 days Erdogan will try. One of them is, of course, foul play, deep fakes, etc., which have become prominent in other elections as well. It's very possible that we will see videos or documents showing CHP and pro-Kurdish DEM cooperating, and even DEM relating instructions from PKK, the terror organization, to CHP. It is possible, though not very probable, that after an 11th hour bargain, the new welfare party will withdraw its candidate in Istanbul. That candidate currently attracts roughly 3 to 4% of the vote, which is the margin of victory for Ekrem İmamoğlu. Again, Erdogan could resort to the ultimate nuclear fiscal option of announcing another pension hike for 16 million retirees at the cost of like $30 billion a year, but that would win him the elections. Finally, it is rumored that the incarcerated former Kurdish leader Selahattin Demirtas will issue a letter urging Kurdish voters not to vote strategically for CHP, but, for their own party. All of these are possibilities. Again, Turkish elections have always witnessed shocks or completely unprecedented events. But I think at this point, and given that this is the municipal elections, the country is divided right in the middle between those who like Erdogan and those who don't like Erdogan. And regardless of their party choice, in a general election, those who are antagonistic to Erdogan are going to migrate to CHP candidates or whichever opposition candidate is leading in their city. And the sole reason for that is Erdogan, because Erdogan has made winning Istanbul the centerpiece of his campaign. If he had paid less attention, I suppose voters would have chosen their own parties rather than migrating to Ekrem İmamoğlu. He again started the campaign by economic promises, which are legitimate, but then seeing how these didn't resonate with the voters, resorted to shaming, blaming, and demonizing, which also angers the opposition voters. If Erdogan wins Istanbul, his political career is guaranteed for life. If the opposition, once again, comes disappointed out of these elections, most opposition voters don't ever bother to go to polls. I know I don't represent the average Turkish family or the citizens of Turkey, but a lot of my friends are already trying to get residencies or passports for other countries because it's going to become unlivable for secular pro-opposition people like us. If he loses Istanbul, on the other hand, if he wins Istanbul, he would immediately start debate on a new constitution, the sole purpose of which would grant him a third term. So he will run again in 2028, and quite frankly, I think he will win. I think like Putin or Xi Jinping, he will remain in power for as long as he wants to, until, he dies, essentially. If he loses, it's a completely different dynamic. There are two paths. One, to accept his defeat and focus on economic policy, improving Turkey's economic conditions, e.g., reducing inflation and reducing Turkey's hard currency deficit, the current account deficit, and hoping for a constitutional referendum 2-3 years down the line where he will run on a campaign of, I have improved the economy, I can do more, give me another chance. Or if he loses, he can immediately up the bargain and call early elections. According to Turkish constitution, if there is an early election, the president's past terms don't count. He can run once again. Now, I don't know why he would do that, because if he lost the big cities, he's very probable to lose the election as well. But this is Erdogan, he's unpredictable. And I don't think the opposition would say no to early elections. I mean, the whole reason of existence for the opposition is to govern the country, and if Erdogan throws them a bone, they will jump at it. Or he could, use some completely false, fraudulent court cases to sack Ekrem İmamoğlu and perhaps even the Ankara mayor Mansur Yavaş, which would certainly lead to extreme international criticism, perhaps the ostracization of Turkey, and even domestic unrest. At the end, though, if you ask me what would happen, Erdogan would probably lose Ankara, Istanbul, and Izmir. And I think rather than upping the ante and trying radical solutions to his Istanbul problem, he will focus on economy and let Mehmet Şimşek do his work. In a year or two, when we have a normal economy that's with low and stable inflation and a stable currency, he may then start negotiations on, changing the constitution or early elections. He has until 2027 to either call a constitutional referendum or call early elections. Well, thank you very much for watching Real Turkey channel videos. You know, we have a small audience, so please subscribe and if you like the content, share it with your friends who like to watch content about Turkey. This is Atilla Yeşilada saying goodbye from Istanbul.